one of the ones that really still gets attention, and a lot of people come up to me and they go, "Oh, I didn't know you played on that," was Billy Cobham's Spectrum. It was we cut that in 1973 at Electric Lady Studios in New York. And our group, The Section, had been on the road opening for Mahavishnu Orchestra.
Mhm. Yep.
And for those that don't know, they were one of the forefront of the jazz rock fusion era of the early 70s with Chick Corea and Return to Forever and Herbie Hancock and Headhunters and all that. And we went in the studio to cut that album. We had finished the tour with them, and Billy and I became friends. And he contacted me and he said, "Look, I got a record deal. Would you come to New York and work with me?" And I said, "I'd love to," because we went in, we cut the album in 2 days.
Oh, wow.
It's really one take of each song. And I had become friends with Billy and Jan Hammer, the keyboard player in Mahavishnu Orchestra, and they were going to do it. But when I walked in the studio, Tommy Bolin was there to play guitar. Now, I knew Tommy from Zephyr days back in the late 60s when I was in a band called Wolfgang and we did gigs together. In my heart of hearts, Tommy was still probably one of the greatest guitar players that's ever lived in the rock and roll business. So we got in there and we had a ball, but it was a ferocious couple of days. I almost couldn't remember it when I left because it was so intense. But anytime I'm anywhere in the world, if I start playing do 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 do, man, guys jump all over it. So that was really for me one of those albums that first off nobody ever really thought of me in that genre.
Yep.
So it's really fun that they discover that. And plus, I loved the guys. It was an amazing project.
And the complexity of the songs and the fact that you did them in one take and maybe two takes at most, and you did it over just 2 days. I mean, how did that work then? Do you go into the studio having worked out what it was going to be in advance, and then you just say, let's record it and see what happens? Or how does that kind of thing
I
work?
hadn't heard one thing before we got in the studio.
Okay,
I
wow.
had no idea it was going to be. Tommy went a day early to work on the heads with Jan, so he could show him like the heads to the tunes. And when I got there, we started playing the song, and and I started playing bass lines, and we kind of discussed things. And there was a couple of things where we did some linear things and worked those out, and then just counted it off and went for it. And Ken Scott was the engineer on it, who's one of the great engineers of things. So it was like a perfect little storm in there. Robert Moog came down. If you were listening to the album and you hear some little interludes where you hear stuff going, it's like electronic drums. Well, Robert Moog, the synthesizer genius, came there and brought down his first prototype electronic drums. So that was Billy experimenting with that. So there was a lot of stuff going on. Um, we were hardly eating. There was a place called Orange Julius here in the States that made these like orange drinks and strawberry drink. We pretty much for 2 days lived. There was a one down the street, and we just kept ordering buckets of this stuff and drinking it. That was about it. I think we only had one meal in the 2 days. We were just in the zone on this. But that's the way it works best. When you really get into that headspace and you are there, you could be working for 5 minutes or 5 hours and it feels the same. You know, your brain is in another place. And that was a special project that I still feel incredibly fortunate to have had the opportunity to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, you've worked with so many drummers over the course of your career. Where does Billy Cobham rank amongst those that you've played with?
Well, I mean, that's one of the things where I've been really luckiest because I got to work with Billy Cobham. And one of the greatest drummers I ever worked with is Phil Collins. And I spent years with Phil. And then you have the Vinnie Colaiutas and the Greg Bissonets and I've spent 54 years with Russ Kunkel, and and Jim Keltner's and Jim Gordon's. So when I look back at my career, probably one of the things I cherish the most is my relationship with some of the greatest drummers in the world.
Yeah.
I've gotten to work with Dave Weckl and Simon Phillips and
Oh, of
all these
course. Yeah,
guys.
yeah.
So, I every time I walk in a studio, I just sort of pinch myself and I just go, oh man, check out. And then the really exciting thing is if I end up working with a drummer I've never heard of, a new guy on the scene, and you sit down and you start playing and you go, oh, this is so good. Because each one brings like new nuances to your playing. Like one guy maybe leans on top of the beat, where another guy sits behind the beat, another guy's right in the pocket, or somebody who like their snare is in front, but their kick is in back. So you're constantly adjusting to this. And I don't look at it as a challenge. I look at it as just something that's really keeps me on my toes, keeps me thinking in different ways, because you really to do the job that I've done in this business, you really have to be a chameleon.
Yeah.
And you have to readjust what you do every day. You can't come in and say, well, this is what I do. You're adjusting to different artists, different players and stuff. And I think that's the thing that's kept it fresh for me, is that you can't get complacent when you're in this end of the business, because you're challenged every day with something new.
Yeah, absolutely. And
So,
I was just going to say as well, because it attests to your brilliance in a way that the rhythm sections are so important to any song. And the fact that you can work with so many different guys of different abilities and different styles. And as you said, in front of the groove and on the pocket and behind the beat and things like that. And the fact that you still pull off some incredible music is just
yeah,
fantastic.
yeah, I love it every day. I still enjoy it as much today as I did when I first started working in the studio in 1970.
Fantastic stuff.